Hi, and thanks for logging on to the Daily DVAR Halacha. And here's a brand new halacha for you, and it's for Tuesday, July 3rd, 20th day of Tamuz. Here we go. More laws about the 9 days, which are rapidly approaching. No building, generally construction is not allowed. Decorating your home, like we said yesterday, shouldn't be done during the 9 days. But if you're building a shul, or you want to continue on in the building of a shul, that's a mitzvah, so that's allowed even during the 9 days. If your community is in the middle of building a mikvah, they can continue right through the 9 days because of the mitzvah level of how important that is. Same thing if you've never heard of it, a makkah is a railing that goes all around a roof such that people should not fall off of the roof if it's the kind of roof that people are often on. So it's a mitzvah to build a makkah, a fence around any roofed area where people often go. So if you're in the middle of construction of that, that could continue right through the 9 days. If you contracted with a non-Jew to do work on your home before the 9 days, it is allowed to continue right through the 9 days. But if you can delay him and ask him to not do work during the 9 days with a little extra money to say, here's a little extra money, can you just delay my piece of the job and do it after the 9 days, that would be a good thing for you to try to do. If you can't, he could continue his work through the 9 days if he's a non-Jewish contractor. Planting for pleasure, gardening to just beautify up your garden, that should be delayed and not done during the 9 days. Okay, also during the 9 days, we abstain from eating meat or drinking wine. There are two reasons for that. Reason number one is because it gives us joy to consume meat and wine, and we want to curtail our joy. Secondly, meat and wine were often offered up on the Mizbeach, on the altar in the temple, and we're mourning the destruction of the temple, so it would be inappropriate to be consuming meat and wine at that time. Meat and wine are allowed at a Sudas mitzvah, any meal that's for mitzvah, like a bris, a pidyon haben, or a siyum of an appropriate thing. We'll discuss that a little later. What's an appropriate siyum? If you finish a small thing, that's not called a siyum. But if it's anything big enough, then it's a siyum. Then you can have meat and wine at that siyum. If you want to make kiddush on Shabbos, of course you could have grape juice or wine, but even if you're making Friday night kiddush early, you've accepted early Shabbos, so it still feels like it's part of the 9 days. Because you've accepted early Shabbos, you're allowed to have meat or wine, wine at your kiddush and meat at that meal. If your shalosh shudas at the end of Shabbos ever runs late, and it spills into Saturday night, but it's still the shalosh shudas meal, then you could continue to consume meat and or wine at that meal. At Havdalah, during the 9 days, there are three different ways that you could go. Some rabbis allow wine or grape juice at the Havdalah of the 9 days. Some say, sure, use grape juice or wine, but give it to a child to drink. And some people say, just use beer instead, or something like beer, a substantial drink, not like water, but a substantial kind of drink, like something like beer, an important kind of drink. You can do that at your Havdalah also if you want during the 9 days. Thanks for logging on, and log on again tomorrow for more. Bye-bye.